Everybody got that announcement? Okay. Please remember that all of the announcements from day one are still posted in Blackboard for you to look back at and see like when certain things were due or when certain things were available to you. And everything from the beginning of the semester is also still available under course content. So you've got like a history, or I guess we could call it a portfolio of all of the work that you've done so far. So a couple people contacted me about turning in previous work, like the Safe Haven Baby Box assignment or something from September. Some people have contacted me about that. Of course, I will evaluate that for a grade if you turn it in right now, but I will only evaluate something that old for half of the credit that it was originally worth. So yes, I will evaluate it, but you still might not end up with a grade you're happy with. I mean, it's going to be better than a 0 if a 0 is showing, but you still are probably not going to be happy with the grade that you end up getting. So that fifth 25-point activity that I mentioned to you all in person and also in writing, that optional fifth one, use that one that you're going to work on independently. There's not going to be any discussion board or group work component to it. Use that one to replace a low grade that you don't like.
So it is going to replace it, it's not going to...
It's not going to be extra credit. It's optional, not for extra credit, but to replace a low grade from one of the first 4 25-point assignments. Does that make sense? Okay. Alrighty, and are we ready for new stuff? Okay, so this new stuff that we start today is not technically entirely new, because you're going to hear a ton of review words, a ton of review concepts from now on, here on out. We're going to continue to talk about social inequality. We're going to continue to talk about social structure, norms, social facts, deviant behavior even. We're going to talk about the economy. We're going to talk about so many different topics that we have looked at kind of in separate boxes somewhat at the beginning of the semester. Now we're going to put all those things in one box and shake it up, because all of these social topics, these topics about how society is organized, all of these topics are linked together, and none of them exist in a box over here that doesn't touch this box, that doesn't touch this box. Everything is all mixed together. Make sense? So I'm going to be asking you things like, what is the socialization process all about? What do statuses and roles mean? What about a social group? What's a category of people mean? What are social facts? I'm going to ask you these questions like I have, since the beginning. But these, every time you hear me refer to a topic from a previous chapter, like socialization, chapter 3, every time you hear me refer to that, you need to make a mental note that on the 4th test that you will be working on sometime during Thanksgiving break. I will make it available to those of you who want to work on it over Thanksgiving break. But it will be due during our final exam time when we're supposed to have our final exam, which I think is, does anybody know, ours in particular is like Monday the 9th of December, I want to say, at like 8 a.m. or something. Anyway, I'll post the time on Blackboard for you if I haven't already done that. Online students, of course, have a Friday date for the previous Friday, like December 6th, I want to say, as the final exam time for online students. So anyway, all of these topics, if you hear me say socialization, I will try to remember to tell you chapter 3. You need to make a note for yourself. I got to go back and at least have quick access to my notes and my textbook about socialization, because those are some of the topics that are going to be on that last test that you have to complete for this class. Make sense? Yes, ma'am. What question? That's fine.
This topic,
No.
25-point, the last one.
Yes.
That we can use to replace
The 25-point assignments?
I don't have like a bad 25 grade.
That's why the 5th one is optional. Okay, I'm glad that you mentioned that. And I also wrote this down in an announcement. However, the 5th 25-point assignment is optional. I'm going to make it available for everybody. You choose whether you do it or not. You choose based on looking back at your first 4, which we haven't had the 4th one yet. So I'm glad that you don't have any grades on the first 3 that you don't like. Don't bomb the 4th one intentionally. But if you are happy with your first 4 scores on the first 4 25-point assignments, then blow the 5th one off, by all means.
So we can't like add it to our total.
I thought you would be happy about that, Amanda. Instead of like, oh. But no, no, that kind of is your extra credit. So I mean, if you've got, even if you've got like a 22 out of 25, you can attempt the 5th one. If you get a 25 out of 25, I'll throw that 22 out if the 22 is your lowest score. Absolutely. Okay? Anybody else? Okay, so our last unit we're talking about is going to focus on really all 4 of our course learning outcomes, but definitely the last 2 course learning outcomes, 3 and 4. We have 4 course learning outcomes in general, but course learning outcome number 3 and number 4 talk about understanding and being able to discuss and describe connections between all sorts of components of social structure, like social institutions, which is our major topic today. Social institutions we first discussed probably back in chapter 2, but definitely back in chapter 4. It's one of the 3 major components of social structure. So, course learning outcome, I call them CLO. CLO number 3 and number 4, which you can see on your syllabus. Those talk about being able to make connections between different components of society, such as the wide variety of social institutions that we have on the macro scale. Remember, these things exist on the macro scale, okay? But how do these macro scale methods for ensuring that needs are met in a population? I'll write that down in a second, but that's the definition of social institutions. Macro scale methods or frameworks to make sure that the needs of a population are met. That's what a social institution is. There's a long list of them. You've got some in your notes already. These things exist on the macro scale. But how do they affect us on the micro scale? If the norms and the social facts exist in a social structure based on what the social institutions are, then how does that shape our life outcomes and how does that shape our life experience? Okay, so we're getting deep in here. Preston, can you take off your hood because it's freaking me out a little bit.
I'm so cold.
Did you get wet? Okay, that's
Yes.
good. Can we do it that way? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because I'm like, oh, Preston the Unabomber is here after.
Don't say that.
No, I'm just teasing you. But yeah, I was like, couldn't even tell if you were with me or not. So, okay, glad to see your smiling face. Okay, so social institutions is the singular topic. It's the singular topic for every single lecture between now and Thanksgiving break, and then the one that we have the week after Thanksgiving. Social institutions are macro scale parts of the social structure, one of 3 macro scale parts of the social structure. They are methods, or you can use the word frameworks, you can use the word norms, for ensuring that the needs of a population are met. They are methods for ensuring that the needs of a population are met. That is an N on the end of that word. Let's see, I've got a brown marker that kind of is my only other color, my only different color marker. I want to point out that I said here that social institutions are macro scale things, and here's why. We're talking about the entire population of a place. So my goal for these last few weeks that we have together in the semester, my goal is to focus on at least 3, actually 4. We're going to focus on 4 social institutions. There are many more than 4 social institutions, but we're going to focus on 4. And we are going to try to look at the macro scale norms and the frameworks, the methods that those social institutions engage in, and what the particular needs are that they ensure are fulfilled. Make sense? Okay. So those 4 social institutions are, that we're going to focus on, those 4 are family. This. Please notice that I put a capital F here. I do that as a weird Miss Terrell thing to remind myself that I'm talking about the concept of family, the norms about family on the macro scale. That's just the way I keep track of whether I'm talking about macro scale forces, macro scale situations regarding family, or when I talk about family on the micro scale, I use a lowercase f, a little f, to remind myself I'm talking about micro scale stuff, like who makes up the household that Amy has compared to Amanda, compared to Preston, etc., right? Because we all have, on the micro scale, a wide variety of different people, statuses and roles, social groups that make up what we call family on the micro scale, right? But on the macro scale, family is a social institution because we have norms associated with, look at my air quotes, typical families. When I say the word typical family, what pops into your mind as a description of what I'm talking about? Okay, there we go. Yes, mom, dad, I think I heard somebody say the word heterosexual, in a heterosexual situation. And just so the word mom and dad imply that there are children in that family. How many children you want them to have? You want them to have twins? Yeah, the average these days, some of y'all might have heard that we average out how many kids per family, and it's like how many? Is it in the 3s already? Okay, yeah. I mean, I would have to ask Siri what exactly the average number of children is for the typical family. Let me tell you what the 0.5 or 0.7 or whatever it is. It used to be 2.8 children per family. We take all the families, all of the units that identify themselves as families on the micro scale. We take all those units and we look at the people who are composed there. And some families have 6 kids, and some families have 1, and some families have none, and some families have, how many do the Duggars have these days? Do y'all remember that? 20-something? Yeah. Is that show even still on TV? I don't know. So some people have that many. Is it so? Yeah. So anyway, we take all those millions of people, and how many families are there, and divide it by the number of children, and that's where we get the point-something children. And families, typical family, every time I do air quotes, y'all, it's because we're talking about norms here, right? And does everybody follow norms? No. So remember, not everybody follows norms, but if we can say, and I asked you spontaneously, what does typical family mean? And I heard 4 or 5 of you respond without practicing it ahead of time. With mom, dad, sister, brother, heterosexual, we talked about what you responded with macro scale norms for what a kindergarten teacher somewhere, right across town is with her classroom right now, or listen to my bias, I said the kindergarten teacher was a her, forgive me. Kindergarten teacher's with his class right now reading a golden book about how mommy's fixing supper and daddy's coming home from work, right? We get these messages in our socialization process. So we have this idea, and you all did not practice the answer ahead of time, that family means woman, man, and children. But that's what we have in our minds. So that family structure has a function in society. It ensures that needs of a population are met. For instance, since a family has mother, father, that implies children, family's major need, society's major need that family ensures happens is reproduction. Population increase. It doesn't have to be population increase, but the population continues because we need people to reproduce. We need people to reproduce. We need golden books read to kindergartners that teach them that it's, here are my air quotes, normal to have babies when they're older. We need that to happen because and you might think it's funny to think about, but if people your age stop having babies, older people like me, and older, hopefully I have some time left, are still going to die at the same rate. We're still dying. If you people aren't having enough babies to make up for all of us who are dying, what's going to happen to our population for a while? After a while?
It's going to decrease.
Going to really decrease.
But isn't the reproduction rate way higher than the
In our society, we usually don't have problems with this. We see booms, like I know that people your age call everybody who's older than you a boomer. But anyway, we have baby boomers who are really, products of people coming back from World War II and having a whole bunch of babies. And then there's a whole bunch of millennials. But millennials aren't having a whole bunch of kids themselves. And so there's kind of like, sometimes there's swells in population, sometimes there's decreases in population. But in general, family ensures through reproduction that future citizens are going to be around to make up a population for there to be a society, a social structure, how do I finish this sentence? For there to be a social structure, period. Right? Okay, yes.
This is just for clarification. What is the age range for millennials?
I was mistaken. So what's the age range for millennials? That's the question that you're asking. I just have to repeat it because sometimes questions don't come across on the video very well. And I thought your age range, like 20, I thought that at the beginning of the semester. I thought that my students were mostly millennials, but no, it's like, what, 30?
Gen Z.
Yeah, y'all are Gen Z. So I had my generations mixed up because I was only focused on my own generation. I was ethnocentric about my own generation. So I'm an Xer.
Millennials are 81 to 96.
Say it again.
81 to 96.
Millennials were born 81 to 1996. Yeah. So that's the age group. Are you a millennial? There we go. Have more babies, please, because you people are not having. No, I can't talk you into.
Because I had a baby, of course, almost 15 years ago. I haven't had any more kids. Like, we understand that it's harder out here if you have more children. I don't want to,
Babies are not free. They're expensive little suckers. Yeah, and actually, this exact sentiment that you're telling me here, I had my one baby and then I stopped because we realized it's a hard struggle. That particular sentiment is common throughout the entire human race and lots of cultures everywhere. And here's a true story. 20 years ago, 30, yikes, it was 30 years ago, I had some exchange students stay with me from Austria, tiny little country in Europe, not Australia, Austria in Europe. Anyway, and two of them actually, I had 3 different exchange students, 3 different years, and 2 of them told me that in Austria at the time, there was a population crisis because people her age, childbearing age like y'all, were not having even their first one, like you described. You had your first one and you decided to stop. Well, they weren't even having their first one. And because babies are expensive. I have to think about somebody else other than me. I have to spend my money on somebody else other than me. I have to, organize my schedule around somebody else other than me. They didn't like that idea. So people of childbearing age stopped having children for the most part. And the population really declined. And the government of Austria, which government is another social institution, we're not going to focus to write it on the board as a social institution because I'm only going to write the ones that we're going to focus on for the rest of the semester. But government is a social institution, and they looked at the population crisis and said, we got to do something, or I can't remember what date they said, by such and such a date, we won't have a native Austrian population anymore. And I don't remember what the incentives were exactly, but they increased maternity leave. I want to say that they offered females a year of maternity leave, I want to say, and they offered the fathers paternity leave for like 6 months.
But you gotta keep
I
the
think,
18 years.
and they didn't stop there. You do have to keep it. Well, in our society, you have to keep them for 18 years, but 18 is an arbitrary number that just applies to the norms in our society. But they also gave a money incentive. I don't remember how much it was, but it was around $20,000 per child.
Yeah, I remember.
It was something like that.
Well, come on, let's have some.
Yeah.
fun, right?
We don't need it. Y'all are we don't need to pay you to have more babies because we don't have that problem in this society. Japan is having that problem right now. South Korea is having that problem right now. There are many societies around the world that are having that problem right now because people of childbearing age are opting instead to remain childless.
Or abortion's a thing, so that's something that's brought to light.
With whatever method they are opting to stay childless, they are opting to stay childless. In Japan, it's not about choosing abortion, it's about choosing to stay. There are major moves for celibacy in Japan. Like celibacy is not a religious kind of situation. Celibacy means you abstain from sex and stay virginal. Well, you don't actually, you can become celibate even after you're not a virgin anymore. But in Japan, there's a big push to just simply not engage in sexual activity with another person. So, and that's one of the main reasons that in Japan, not any kind of intervention, like birth control or, that is birth control, but it's birth control just through not doing it. Not doing what causes it.
100% preventable.
Yeah, 100% preventable. Okay. So anyway, yes, family, you have to make sure that the population of the entire nation continues. And Mallory said this 18 magic number back here. As we know, in our socialization process, Chapter 3, in our socialization process, we have to learn everything. Babies are not born with a SIM card that already has some data in it, right? So you have to have a way, a population, has to have a method for raising up folks to be the next set of adults, the next set of voters, the next set of citizens, the next set of taxpayers. We have to have a method for raising up those folks because they don't come raised up, right? So in our society, the norm on the macro scale is that family does it. Family. And in our society, we are big on family being somebody who has a bloodline with us. We're very big on that. That's the norm. Family, in our estimation, means that people are blood related in some kind of way or marriage related in some kind of way. Okay? So, anyway, family is also in charge of, you say, rearing human beings, you say, raising farm animals, rearing humans. So, rearing children is the proper vocabulary word.
But it means like raising.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not,
Which one, raising children?
well, if you want to not have the college level knowledge about a basic vocabulary word. Yeah, it means raising children, but you don't raise. For instance, I want to tell you this word because, for instance, if you take a Spanish class right on the other side of this wall, and Senora Retravino tells you to write a paragraph about what you're doing in life, and you say, I'm raising 3 kids, and you try to translate that with Google or you try to translate that with the glossary in your textbook, you are going to tell her that you are in the process of bringing up 3 small goats is what you're going to tell her.
Well, basically.
That's what your kids are. So anyway, kid is also a slang word for children. So anyway, to be perfectly clear, so people in a time capsule that see this 500 years from now, rearing children is the focus of the family because they don't come with an unlimited amount of data already programmed on them. Okay, so yes, so the family is the one in charge. We could have a different method on the macro scale. We could have something, y'all can write a movie about this. We could have something where babies are born and some agency comes in and takes those babies immediately and raises them up until they're 18 and releases them into the wild. I mean, that could be a method to do it. That would make sure people are safe and that they learn. We don't have that method in our society. Family has that duty. Okay? So, whenever we talk about a social institution, you have to look at what are the norms, what are the methods that are outlined by that social institution, and what are the needs that it meets for the population. So here's two of the needs. Okay, there are more, but this is just what we're going to talk about right now. Okay, also, another social institution that we are going to talk about a lot is the economy. The economy. The economy establishes a framework for exchanging goods and services. The economy establishes a framework for exchanging goods and services. The economy establishes norms for wages associated with different jobs that are available in a society. The economy provides frameworks for interest rates and your ability to get credit lines and things like that, your purchasing power. So it does all of these things because a population needs a method so that one person can't swindle another person without repercussions, right? That wages are pretty much even across the board for certain positions. We're going to, any questions about the economy? I mean, we're still talking about the economy here. I just want to make sure I'm not going too fast. Okay. We're going to talk about the connection between the economy and the family in this chapter, in this unit. So just like our CLOs 3 and 4 say in our syllabus, we need to talk about the connections between these things. You can write all you want, a definition. Here's what family means as a social institution. Bingo. But it does not exist on a shelf by itself. It's got all the other social institutions wrapped up in it. Okay? So we're going to talk about the connection here. Let me use this space on the board over here. Another social institution that we're going to focus on a lot is religion. Religion is a social institution. Please notice I did not write Christianity. Right? You notice that? Christianity is a macro scale word, but religion is a more macro scale word. Right? Religion is a social institution, and I could be talking about Judaism. I could be talking about Islam. I could be talking about Hinduism. I could be talking about Shinto. I could be talking about any number of macro scale religious belief systems around the world. In the United States, however, what is our assumed religion? Christianity. Okay? So we will focus on Christianity to analyze it and its link to social life and social structure in the United States because that's our default assumption, Christianity. So religion. religion is a framework to provide people in the population a standard set of beliefs and rules to follow, a standard baseline for moral behavior. Before class started, Amanda was asking me about some law that you heard that some law was in the Arkansas books about what?
About where a man can take his wife to the courthouse.
A husband can
the
take.
last Sunday of every month and beat her.
Okay, I am not aware that there has ever been a law on an Arkansas law book anywhere that says a husband can take a wife on the fourth Sunday of the month or last Sunday of the month. I mean, okay, maybe there has been some kind of somewhere, but when she told me that she heard that there was this law where a man could beat his wife once a month in public, it reminded me immediately about Sharia law. And that I have researched in the past. Sharia law is the name of the legal system that comes from Islam. And in Islam, there is a long section in the Sharia law book that we have in our library. It's called the Reliance of the Traveler. It's got Arabic on one side and English on the other. There's a long description about the certain circumstances where it is not only possible for any male, a brother, uncle, father, husband, any male to discipline a female relative. It's kind of a requirement for family honor. So if you do something that is shameful for the family unit, your brother is obligated to regain that family social respect, the prestige, like Max Weber talked about, by disciplining you with witnesses, maybe to death. In certain circumstances, maybe to death. And so that's not a crime if your brother actually brings about your death while he's disciplining you, because he's obligated to do that, and the death is forgivable based on morality of that system. Okay? So if that to you sounds like a crime, sounds like a violation of human rights, sounds like a fill in the blank, it's because you are coming from a socialization process in a country that has a different religion other than Islam as the dominant ideology that is used for laws, that's used for the basis of mores, and even used for the basis of that answer that you gave me a minute ago when I asked you, with my air quotes, what a typical family was. And you said mom, dad, and somebody used the word heterosexual. Is that typical family? Does that come from Christian religious ideas? And right now, just yesterday, did y'all hear about the terrible massacre in Mexico of the American family that was a polygamist family? What does polygamy mean? Multiple spouses. Polygamy means multiple spouses. We'll talk about that in just a second. You and I, when we hear the word polygamy, because our socialization process talks about a male having multiple wives. We are unaware that around the world, a female can have multiple husbands and does, and that's a very good reaction to impoverished conditions. So a family is linked to the economy. Family structure can be linked to the economy. Anyway, so around the world, there are two different kinds of polygamy. We're familiar with a husband having multiple wives rather than a wife having multiple husbands. Polygyny? Polygyny is a man having multiple wives. GYN, like a gynecologist, is a woman doctor. So polygyny, multiple women. And polyandry, andro means man, means male. Polyandry is multiple husbands. And together, polygamy is the word that means both of those included.
That's why I thought polygamy was the guy.
I know. That's because your socialization process happened in the USA. Yeah, and that's what we think. Polygamy, the only form that polygamy takes. So you can see with just that description just now, even the typical family answer you gave me, regardless of whether you yourself are Christian, you were reared in the USA, and therefore you learned from that children's book that the kindergarten teacher is reading right now to a new group of kindergartners, that mommy and daddy are the core of a family. Mommy means female, daddy means male. right? So, and where does that come from? You do not have to be Christian to follow that assumed practice of who makes up the members of, here's my air quotes again, typical families, okay? And so when we hear polygamy, what do we think about that? Do we judge that?
As Christians,
Or as just norms.
Well, but not every USA person is, there's no obligation for you to be a practicing Christian or follow Christianity from USA. So even if you're not,
But even if
I mean,
you
it's
don't
different.
practice it,
We can't even marry multiple people here.
we can marry multiple people.
We can.
That was
Not all at once. You have to get rid of the
That's
first
what
one
I
before you get the
meant.
next one.
I meant all the
Yeah,
even
yeah.
if you don't,
Did your hand kind of halfway go up a minute ago? No? No, okay.
even if
So-
you don't practice, like I don't practice necessarily, but my parents have been drilling me to act like this, say this, do this, or just having me go from such a young age. So even if I don't practice it, it's still drilled in me.
Exactly, yeah. Even if you don't follow what you have learned during your socialization process, you still have that little bit of, ooh, maybe even inner examination. Am I doing wrong or something? Yeah. Am I odd? Am I? Do what? Well, okay, we don't need to stay on this too long. What time is it? But I'll tell you a story about that. Okay. I don't remember how long ago it was. It's been maybe 15 years ago. A very famous sociologist, USA sociologist, was talking about how difficult it is, even in a two-income household. And that two-income household word is one of these links. See this arrow connecting these two? Just having the term two-income household is one of the links that the economy has with family structure on the macro scale. So even in two-income households, how difficult it is to maintain, here's another review word, the average standard of living. Athena and Marissa, y'all be with me here. Athena, you got it? So how do you maintain the average standard of living even when you have a two-income household and it's just not cutting it? So this particular sociologist, he was male, suggested that to solve this problem, to allow polygamy. The particular kind of polygamy was polygyny, a man with multiple wives, and his solution was 2 wives specifically. One wife to be the income earner, and the other wife to be the housewife, because then there is non-wage earning work that has to be done in the household, like just doing the dishes, or doing the laundry, or brushing a child's teeth, daycare, tutoring, all of these kinds of things. His solution was have a working wife and have a housewife. And that way, all you have to do is provide food and shelter and access to income to the housewife. And that's not, how much is it for one kid in daycare these days? Like
at least like $270
a week?
Oh wait, no.
How much for a kid like a week?
$1,600 for 3. That's all.
$1,600 a month for $1,600 a month for 3 kids? Okay, so that's only one of the expenses that this sociologist, and I am not advocating this, y'all. Okay, I'm just telling you a story.
just have 2 words.
That's why I said childcare. That's enough on its own. Just watching the kids.
Yeah, just watching the kids, just being a taxi driver to and from doctor's offices and stuff, paying bills, all the kinds of stuff that has to happen that's non-wage bearing in the household. So that was his solution to that, and I was thinking, okay, I would be willing to volunteer for this. However, I want to make one modification. I want to be my husband's wife, and then I want a wife.
I remember you talking about that. Yeah.
I want a wife. I don't want to share anything with her other than household duties. And like my husband and I can be there, but having a wife is like your own legally sanctioned slave, according to this sociologist's, solution for the economic struggles that households go through today. It would be so great if I got home and all the laundry was folded and put away and the refrigerator was cleaned out. I spilled something in it this morning and I just shut the door and it's going to be like all dried up before I get home and I'm going to have to clean it up. She could be doing that for me right now. She could be paying all the bills and making sure that this went in and that went in and, organizing. She could be doing all that stuff for me right now because she is the one in the household who typically has that domestic work assignment, and their domestic work assignments for males are different.
It's like
Right?
$1.99 it says for an infant child at daycare.
How much?
$1.99 a week.
$1.99 a week for an
$200
infant,
a week.
for just one infant at daycare a week.
Because you got to put the fees
Nice.
on there. Some daycares you got to pay the facility fee. You got to pay all of this stuff. It'll probably
Yeah, so do you see? So here we are having a conversation about real life social issues, which is another thing that our learning outcomes number 3 and 4 ask us to do. Bring in real life current events and issues into the subject matter that we're discussing. So we're talking about daycare costs, exchanging services and prices for that, and the link to family structure, and the link in the behaviors that have to be engaged in a, here's my air quotes again, typical American family linked to the economy. And the reason we don't have that second housewife or second wife or whatever, or the second husband that some of you are thinking, well, we can just do the flip side too. The reason we don't have it is because there's another link here with simple norms like who makes up the typical American family. That's why the second husband simultaneously with the first husband in the same household is so far out of the scope of our socialization process that you're like, I can watch it on TV, but it ain't gonna be me. Right? Or vice versa. So that's because we don't have to be Christians to think this way, because the kindergarten teacher read us a storybook about mommy and daddy and the kids, not daddy and mommy and mommy and mommy and the kids. Right? So we're not accustomed to that idea. So all of these things are connected. So religion provides a framework for morality in a society. Moral behavior, mores, are about right versus wrong. And it also makes us loyal. Religion creates ethnocentrism about the norms that exist in our society that come from it. We don't like the idea of a brother stoning his sister to death in public because it's against our morality based on the dominant religion, Christianity. And the brother who stones his sister in public might not like it in the country where it is required, but he will do it because it's required, based on that morality. So all of these things are connected. And here's another one that we're going to talk about, the education system. I heard somebody go, ugh, why? Why yuck? It's pretty fascinating, actually, I think. I like all this, though. So we're going to talk about the education system. Mallory had a magic number a minute ago. 18 was the time where you could release them into the wild, right? Well, is our education system, are the norms for educating our population, are they built around this idea that a child is a minor until they hit 18? They sure are. That's the law, so it's linked to government also. They're a minor until they're 18. So is it just a convenient coincidence that 12th graders are usually 17 or 18 years old? Nope. No. It's not a convenient coincidence. It is all linked in to all of this because that also keeps that 18-year-old, that very competent 17, 18, 16-year-old out of major wage earnings in the economy, so it leaves a job open for me because you're not in there yet competing with me. Sorry, Coco. Yeah, so all of these things are mixed together. So the education system is a framework for transmitting knowledge. It's It's an organized method for transmitting knowledge. We are participating in it right now. You come in here like good little robots and you sit down in your seat and you open your notebooks and you start writing stuff because you have been, I'm going to use the word you don't like, reared to follow the norms that go with the education system, because in the United States, we have a standard level of reading, writing, and arithmetic knowledge that a norm on the macro scale we want all citizens to have, residents also to have. And so we require, it is a law that people before 18 are in the education system. And that's linked to how long the family has to be responsible for them too. And that's linked to their ability to engage in the economy in a full-time way. And it's also related to when we're going to allow them to make their own families, because we have this idea that children should not engage in certain behaviors until they have legal status as an adult. And where does that come from?
You can count over 18 too.
Do what?
We're talking about the education system.
Oh, yes. Good. So, yes, obviously, we are over 18 in this room.
Family, okay, not family. Your parents are divorced. Your father still has to pay.
Oh, that's right. Yes. So if the typical family has a divorce, then there are some laws that say certain people are responsible for over 18 payments of certain things having to do with the education system.
I know, like,
In my case, my father's having to go back and pay a year of child support on me because the law changed in Arkansas. Just because I'm 18, I'm still in school. He can pay on me till I'm 25 years old.
oh, really? I know
As
what
long as I'm in school, taking one class, it doesn't matter. If I'm in school, he has to pay.
So if you're 18 or older up until 25, if you're in school, the child support paying parent must continue to pay child support. Okay, I didn't know that.
Or
That's
even just with me being in college,
No, he don't know.
my
It
parents
makes sense.
technically are still, like, if I can't pay the amount, if I don't have enough fees to cover, they're still responsible for it. Like,
yes. They sometimes they have to co-sign for a student loan, for instance, even if you're over 18. Yeah, if they still count you on their taxes. So here's another, if you're still living at home, they're still counting you as a tax deduction because you're expensive. Then yeah, you have obligations to pay for tuition past the secondary education level, and yeah, and that idea that mothers and fathers are responsible for their children comes from this.
So okay, let's talk about gender roles with that.
Ooh.
So if you were living with your father after the divorce and your mother, because mothers can go on child support as well.
Right.
So would your mother be also?
Okay, so the question is about gender roles, and I was careful. You're asking if the child support paying parent is a female instead of the child support paying parent being a male. I was careful to say child support paying parent when we were talking about this because our default assumption usually is which parent is the one paying child support. And the father, the male. And the reason that's our default position is precisely because of this word gender roles that you're using. We assume that father is also provider, and that's a status that they have. And mother is also caregiver, and that's a status that they have. But mother might also be provider to a certain extent. Yeah. So anyway, the gender roles absolutely apply here because usually the default position is after a divorce, the mother gets preferential treatment as far as getting custody, and the father has to be the child support paying parent. But yeah, so the laws affect a child support paying parent. So the laws are written as though they are unbiased, but can be applied in a biased way, since in our socialization process, little girls learn what their role in their future is going to be. For instance, you're taking sociology at a good time of year because you can go into Walmart and look at the toy aisle for like 10 and under toys and look at the way in Walmart those toys are segregated based on the gender, the sex, and the gender of the kids. So look at the toys for a 7-year-old boy compared to the toys that are clearly marketed for the same age little girl. And you'll find a tool bench and tools for the, plastic ones for the little boy, and a shopping cart with plastic fruits and veggies for the little girl. And a broom and a mop, play kitchen, it's pink and sparkly for the little girl, Hot Wheels trucks and dragon Legos
They have little
for,
grills for little boys.
what'd you say?
Grills.
Little grill, yeah, little outdoor grill, good. If there is something, cooking, yeah, I think I told y'all about the Easy Bake Oven that I bought a couple of family members a few years ago. It's been at least 5 years ago now, but the box had a boy and a girl on the box. So I was like, well, this is good at least. It has a boy and the girl. However, the boy was facing the camera and sitting at a table with an empty plate, holding a knife and fork, looking over his head, looking over his shoulder at the little girl back here getting the cake out of the Easy Bake Oven, who was looking back at the little boy like, coming. I mean, that was, the look on her face.
Like does a 15-seater.
So it's not just the kindergarten teacher reading the Golden Book. It's not just watching That's So Raven, which y'all probably don't even watch anymore, and seeing mom and dad do that kind of stuff. But it's the Easy Bake Oven box. It's the toys and the way they're marketed in Walmart. So we learn behavioral expectations when you buy the toy grill for the little boy and the toy stove, inside stove, for the little girl.
Yeah, my son gets so much judgment, my middle one, because he actually likes playing baby dolls with his sister. And so, I told my family, like, he wants a baby doll.
Yeah.
And they're like, what?
Yeah,
No,
I taught gender studies years ago at UALR, and I had an assignment was to go out and find like advertisements that had traditional gender roles obvious, in the imagery. And there was one of my students worked at KB Toys. I don't even know if that's still open. I think it has closed since then. But she brought in some info from one of the toy suppliers. So it wasn't an ad that the general public could see. It was for the purchaser at KB Toys to look at. And there was a baby doll book. Which baby dolls did you want to stock? And it was like 96 pages of baby dolls, and 2 of them had a dad with a little boy buying a baby doll. 2 pages of 96. The rest of them were little girls, learning how to change diapers, learning how to feed them, learning how to clean up their upchuck, learning how they'll have a baby doll do all this kind of stuff. And that is preparation for your future role when your gender changes from little girl to woman, right?
Do you have 2 daughters?
I have 1 daughter, 2 boys.
Okay. So are the boys the youngest?
They're the oldest.
The oldest?
My little girl's the youngest.
Okay. Does he have girl cousins?
No.
I asked that because my mother had a younger brother, but she had an older sister. So it was 2 older girls and then a younger boy.
Mm-hmm.
And usually you follow what your siblings do.
Yes, there's a lot that goes into the behaviors that we learn during our socialization process. It's not just about mom or dad or whoever it is who is filling that role. It's about what we see all the time. We can learn behaviors from watching SpongeBob SquarePants, and we do. So yeah, we learn from copying things that we see around us every day.
Yeah, and they don't have like a dad, so like they see me as nurturing. So I think that's why he wants to do it. I don't think it's like anything that my family should be doing.
Yeah. What time is it? Yeah, 10:27. Okay, so I have just a few more minutes. So we are going to focus not Tuesday, Monday and Wednesday next week. We're going to focus on family, and within family, we're going to look at the sociological definition of family. Listen to me when I repeat that word: sociological definition of family. Today, I have asked you a couple times, what's the typical family? And you've said mom, dad, and sister and brother. That's not the sociological definition of family. That's what we learn in our socialization process is the normal structure of a family unit in our society. But that's not what most families end up looking like, actually, in our society. So we're going to look at what the sociological definition is of the family. It's different than what you have written down right here. These are the needs that the family on the macro scale fills for a society on the macro scale. This is not the sociological definition of family. We will get that on Monday of next week. We will also look at some assumptions that are linked to our economy, that are linked to our legal system, about who comprises, what members are assumed to be part of a family, and what legal bonds they do or don't have. So marriage is going to be a topic. We're going to define marriage from a sociological perspective also. We should call Congress, tell them to come to class, or at least watch the YouTube channel. What'd you say? I know I couldn't make it. I hope that it was a good turnout. But anyway, so yeah, we're going to look at the definition of marriage and how it ties into this idea of even 18 being a legal age, or using the pronouns my children or my dad, those possession pronouns, even using that. So looking at the language choice that we have in our lexicon, and then also the norms on the macro scale, and all those links, the legal bonds that families follow in our society, in the U.S. Okay? Preguntas? No? Questions? No? Yes?
You said that education is the framework for
Education is a systematic way of providing knowledge. So we'll get that definition. If you missed it this time around, we will get that definition for sure when we talk about education, probably week after next. Okay?
I had the half a sentence.
Yeah, no problem.